All right, today I wanted to talk about the appropriate way to complete the Form W-9 withholding certificate when you have a multi-member LLC. So I've got one very simple slide here that we're just going to walk through, talk about some of the different rules, and then a sample W-9, and we'll look at the various components, and just so you can see what is the appropriate item to complete, boxes to check, and all those other relevant pieces. So some of the basics here. A U.S. LLC or U.S. limited liability company completes W-9s consistent with the way it's taxed for U.S. federal tax purposes, right? And this is because LLCs are a type of hybrid entity, right? They can be taxed in a variety of ways. They can make certain elections to change their tax classification. So when you complete the W-9, you have to be very careful as to selecting the appropriate tax classification. So, but there are certain default treatments, right? So we have multi-member LLCs here. That's our fact pattern, right? So this is an LLC with two or more owners. Now, if you form an LLC with more than one owner, by default, it's going to be treated as a partnership for federal tax purposes, right? So these default tax treatments, you can find these in the Treasury regs, so 301, 7701-3. B. And so specifically with the partnership treatment, if we have a U.S. multi-member LLC treated as a partnership, we haven't made any elections to be taxed as an S corp or a C corp, we would complete the W-9 by checking the LLC box and enter P as the type of tax classification, right? That's the Chapter 3 status. So if we look here, so box 3, so that's our company name, fake company LLC. Box 3, we're checking LLC because we have a limited liability company, and we're entering P for partnership as the tax classification. Now you notice up here we have individual or single member LLC, right? We don't have a single member LLC, so that's why we're not selecting that checkbox there. But we also have partnership up here. So what's the difference here? The difference is when you have if we have an LLC as the legal entity type and we're determining the tax classification, we use this line item here. If you had a general partnership or a limited partnership formed in under state law, so let's say a Delaware LP, so a Delaware limited partnership, or a Delaware GP, Delaware general partnership. Those are partnerships for tax purposes as well, but they're not LLCs. So we would check the box up here for partnership for those types of entities. But in our case, even though it's still a partnership, right, we don't check that box, and we check the appropriate box down here because we are indicating that our legal entity type is an LLC and its tax classification is partnership, okay? Now, what are the two other options here? So we've got a multi-member LLC. What if we made an S corp election, right? So in order to make an S corp election for the LLC, you've got to file Form 2553. And if that election is filed and approved, we would complete W-9, check the LLC box, and then enter S, right? So we have the same LLC check here. Tax classification would be S for S corporation, okay? Then a similar issue for the C Corp election, right? So LLCs can file the C Corp election to be taxed as a C Corp. If you file the 8832 with the IRS and the election's approved, we would be completing Form W-9 with the LLC box checked, and then enter C for the type of tax classification, right? So check LLC, and then instead of P here, we would enter C for corporation. Now again, notice up here, right? We do have C corporation separately listed up there, but that is for an entity that was actually formed as a corporation under state law and is taxed by default as a C corp. So, for example, a Delaware Inc., right? A Delaware corporation, that would be treated as a corporation under state law and for federal income tax purposes, so we would check that box up here. But in our case, we don't have a Delaware corporation. We have an LLC, let's say a Delaware LLC that's formed, and we filed an election to be taxed as a C corp. All right, so obviously under any circumstance here, you would enter the address for the company and then the company's EIN, right? If it's a multi-member LLC, whether it's a C Corp, S Corp, or partnership, you're going to be using the EIN for the legal entity. Now, often get asked about this section up here for exemptions. generally this isn't going to apply, right? So exemptions, exempt payee codes would apply to nonprofit entities, certain types of banks, trusts. Doesn't apply here. We just have a for-profit LLC in the U.S. And then the FACA reporting issue generally happens for accounts that are maintained outside the U.S., right? So we don't have any kind of FACA reporting issues. So that's why more often than not, what you're going to see is that in Box 4 exemption codes, from not just the payee code section, but the FACA reporting code exemption, they're just going to be blank, so you don't have to fill those out. Obviously, read the Form W-9 instructions, right, because there might be some circumstances where you could have to input some information there. But for LLCs formed in the U.S., for-profit entities, completing this W-9 to open a bank account or something like that, you're not going to see any exemption codes. All right, so that covers it for the multi-member LLC Form W-9. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you.